Okay, this video is a demonstration of using the RRTrack track planning program on how to make connections for a reverse loop. At the moment you can see I've got a blank screen here and I've got my library set for my track library that I want to use, which is the Ross library. So I'm going to, at first here, I'm going to select at the moment a 29-inch section of straight track. Now I have my snap at the bottom of the screen down here. I have my snap set at 1 inch. You should always at least have it set for 1 inch because that helps give you precise precision on placing your track on the screen. Now let's take and add some curve track here. I'm going to use at the moment here, let's use some 042 curves. So I'm going to add some 042 curves out here and create this loop on around. Now as we know from our track library up here, if we look at this we can see that our 042 curve sections are 45-degree sections, okay? Which means that from this endpoint right here of the curve, coming downwards is going to be at a 45-degree angle. Now I'm also going to add another 29-inch straight track right there, because I know I'm going to need at least a longer section of track than that. But we also know that this angle is at 45 degrees. Now, not all track is going to be at 45 degrees, okay? This demonstration is specifically for this particular angle that's here, okay? If you're using something such as the 054 curves, note that those are at a 30-degree angle. So once you have formed your 180-degree curve on around here, the next section of track that you put on there is going to form a 30-degree angle instead of a 45. But for right now, you need to know what this angle is going to be in relationship to this section of track down here. We know that this is at 0. We know that this is at 45 degrees. So now let's take and add an 042 turnout. And if you notice, okay, here's my turnout. I selected a right-hand turnout, but you'll notice it's facing the wrong way. Okay, well, I could just drop it right here on the screen and then, you know, go up and tell it rotate it, and I could then rotate it 180 degrees. Then I'd have to move it down here where I want it to be, okay? To make life easy, the best thing to do is to take this endpoint of the straight end of that switch and move it down here so that it's close to the endpoint of this section of straight track and drop it right there, and it automatically flips it around for you so it's in the right orientation. Now I'm going to take and move this over out of the way for right now. But at least I have it oriented in a, you know, close enough a position of what I want. But now this only forms a 32-degree angle with just the switch alone. But they do have in the switch library, they have the makeup curve, which is an additional 13 degrees of that 042 curve, which now gives me my 45-degree angle to meet with this up here. Now the big question has always been, or at least has come up several times, is how do you know what length of straight track do you need in here to get these points to line up, or vice versa? What length do you need here to get this to line up? Well, here's the simplest and easiest way that I know of to get exact, precise precision. I'm going to double click on the switch to highlight it. I'm going to then move it up here and connect it to this straight track. Now I know that this part here is perfectly horizontal because we've got the correct angles in here. Now I'm going to use the measuring tool of the program, which means I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard, and using my right mouse button, I'm going to move my mouse over to the end point of this straight right here. I'm going to hold down that right mouse button and then drag it over to this point up here, and then release the mouse button. You'll now notice that in the top right hand corner of my screen up here, this dialog box came up. It shows me what the dimensions are of this triangle that's down here. It's showing me that I have a 9.38 inch vertical dimension and a 20.76 dimension that's horizontal. Okay? My concern right now is this 9.38 dimension. That's what I'm going to work with. So at the moment, I'm going to select out of this dialog box up here, I'm going to select Cut Straight, which then opens up this box so I can enter in what length of straight track that I want. But I don't know what I want right now, but I can calculate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the calculator that's on my computer. And I want to have it set for scientific mode. Okay? And what I'm going to do is there's a simple formula. I'm going to enter in the 9.38 dimension, and then I'm going to say divide that, and then I enter in the 45-degree angle, or if I was using the 054 curves, it would be a 30-degree angle, or whatever oddball angle this might be at. This happens to be at 45. Then I'm going to say I want to take the sine of that angle and then come down and click on equals. Now I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but it says 13.265. So I want to come over here to my dialog box and I want to enter in my 13.265 dimension. And I say, OK. Now there's my piece of track. Now this piece of track, for the moment, I'm just going to drop it anywhere on the screen. That piece of track is what's going to go between this straight track and the switch. So I need to move my switch out of the way for the moment. Okay? Now I can select that piece of straight track, attach it to there, come back, grab hold of the switch, and add it back on. Now, if again, using the measuring tool, I can measure from the end point of this straight by holding down the control key again, and then holding down the right mouse button and dragging over to here, release the mouse button, and you will now notice in the dialog box up here on the right hand corner, it now shows a vertical dimension of exactly 0 inches, which means it is now in perfect alignment. So all I have to do now is I could say cut straight if I wanted to, which will bring up the dialog box up here again, and I'd have to manually, enter in that number or select one of the dimensions that's in that dialog box. Or I could simply use the option of stock track, and it just, boom, it drops it in there for me, and I've got a perfect reverse loop. I've got everything is lined up absolutely perfect. It's that simple. It's not all that difficult to do. I hope this has been helpful for anybody who's been having issues on how to actually measure and cut precise dimensions and length of track to get a perfect fit.